Welcome, folks, to our Left Coast Writers Literary Craft Talk on Speculative Fiction. Tonight, we will be chatting with Todd Crawshaw. For visual artist, novelist, and poet Todd Crawshaw, creative writing is a visual art. The author of books in multiple genres, he seems to gravitate towards stories that transport the reader to an alternative reality. In other words, speculative fiction. Todd's novels include The Center's Edge Revisited, Portrait of a Rainbow as a Young Man, God, Sex, and Psychosis, Heretofore, and Exploits of a Satyr. He has also published a hybrid genre of poetry and short story, a collection of fiction entitled Light Years in the Dark. The founder of Crawshaw Design, a graphic design firm based in San Francisco that provides integrated brand marketing for print and web. Alternatively, Todd has lived the life of everything from a prehistoric hunter to a painter and a saint, among other things. He likes to say he keeps an open mind. It's great, Todd, to have you here tonight as our guide through the ins and outs of this literary craft. I'm hoping you can start with a short intro to your book, most recent book, and my personal favorite, Goddess, Son of Medusa. But first, maybe an outline of some of your books to date.
Sure. I need to share my screen and then I'll read a little bit from the Goddess, Son of Medusa, and then we can go into the interview. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Speculative fiction explores alternative worlds, the supernatural, the future, imagined realities. It's an important genre because it challenges the mind, making readers think differently and fosters critical thinking. I was trying to think of an early example of the genre, and I came up with Homer's The Odyssey, which at its core has elements of speculative fiction, a journey into uncharted waters and worlds with mythical creatures and magic. I equate speculative fiction to be like songs of the siren, sung to mesmerize voyagers. I don't mean as in the Odyssey where men are lured to their doom, but towards things hauntingly strange and beautiful, to a life-altering experience. In other words, writers of speculative fiction are like sirens, luring readers into the unknown. The opening words of a novel are meant to capture readers' interest to want to know more about this alternative world. If you haven't heard this song, this orchestral piece by Debussy, Sirens, take a listen. It tries to capture that possible haunting sound of the sirens. In terms of modern music, it wouldn't be song from the Beatles like Love Me Do or I Want to Hold Your Hand, but instead one of their songs like Strawberry Fields Forever or songs from Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon or songs like Crystal Ship and The End by The Doors. Coincidentally, this album by The Doors was what inspired me to become a poet and a novelist. So I've written 7 novels so far. The first one was Exploits of the Satyr. It's a multi-genre epic tale, the tragic and comic chronicles of a man who belatedly discovers he was procreated by members of a cult, marrying genetic technology with ancient artifacts to initiate the second coming of Christ. Speculative fiction is also called the what if genre. In this case, what if man plays God, creating a biocomputer with artificial intelligence that ultimately evolves to surpass and threaten human existence? My next novel was called Heretofore. It's a comedy and fantasy in which a girl inexplicably falls from the sky into a world populated by animals with human personalities, 12 anthropomorphic characters who represent life lessons for her to discover as she searches for a way back home. My next novel was it's called God, Sex, and Psychosis. It's a psychological thriller. This is the tagline. When criminal psychologist Myra Skiles is assigned by a court order to evaluate Egan Norwood, a person of interest in a serial murder investigation, she recognizes both a man with a dissociative identity disorder and the boy who once saved her life, with whom she shares a secret history. This is not a conventional murder mystery. It's realistic fiction with speculative fiction as a subgenre. The novel examines how a sexually abused child who develops a multiple personality disorder can function and find his way out of this maze of insanity. The criminal psychologist analyzing him, we discover, has also been sexually abused as a child. My next novel is Portrait of a Rainbow as a Young Man. It's a story about magical realism. A young girl gives a blanket to a homeless man living on the streets, a simple gift of kindness that ends up saving both their lives. A boy is struck by lightning while witnessing a rainbow and survives, but is transformed metaphysically. Two intertwined stories in which this girl and boy connect and reconnect in an extraordinary way. Next novel was Center's Edge Revisited. It's a Twilight Zone saga about the universe as a spiral, depicting good and evil aspects of humans, as the story follows four characters who are reincarnated through four periods in time, evolving towards a convoluted denouement. And Goddess, son of Medusa, a timely and timeless otherworldly fantasy illustrating the metaphoric significance behind the myth of Medusa for the reality of powerful women living within the norms of a patriarchal society. In this story, the what if the myth of Medusa was based on an actual person who had wild hair, dreadlocks that resembled snakes and eyes that could turn men into stone, not literally but figuratively, by using a unique power of hypnosis. And finally, my latest novel, which I haven't published yet, it's a love story combined with the mysterious death of an artist famous for her enigmatic paintings who goes insane after claiming to have seen God. This family saga is literary fiction, but falls into the genre of speculative fiction because it explores why a person would go insane after seeing God. And it also poses the question, is death just another dimension of life? All my story constructs relate to a fluidity of time theme. So now I'm going to read a little bit from Goddess, Son of Medusa. So the epigraph is says, underestimate me. That'll be fun. It's an anonymous origin. This is the prologue. My mother was a monster. Her beauty turned men into stone, if you believe the myth. In truth, she was born into slavery, owned by a cruel woman who considered herself a goddess. As a joke, she bestowed the title of priestess onto my mother, whose duties were to clean the house, a sizable mansion, and attend to her mistress's needs. My mother's incredible beauty turned the heads of men who desired her to themselves. She was sought after by many men. Her mistress, jealous of this attention, deprived my mother of pleasure. She was to remain chaste and celibate for life. As a domestic prisoner, fearing the wrath of her owner, she shunned the advances of men, that is, until she was raped by a sea captain, her mistress's uncle. Blamed for the rape, for seducing him, my mother was set free as her punishment. Her hair was shorn, her scalp shaved. She was cursed by her mistress and banished from the mansion, forced to enter the outside world completely naked. Adding insult to injury, she discovered later she was pregnant with me. I don't blame her for becoming a monster. With one look, she would turn men into stone. Not a metaphor. She did. Because of this power, she was beheaded. Upon her decapitation, did twin sons, a winged horse and boar, fly out of her body? Was her head then placed on a shield to destroy enemies with her deadly gaze during battles? The latter two are metaphors, untruths. I was her only true son. Let me begin again. Mother did have stunning hair. This is true. It grew back in sweeping black coils that resembled writhing snakes. Men became petrified by her beauty. I witnessed this myself when grew old enough to know better. When she became angry at me for some misdeed, I avoided eye contact. Men who dated her, especially those who were racist or approached her with bravado or arrogance, learned this devastating lesson, not to look too late. Did I love my mother? I did. She was pretty, also frightening, not always a monster. She had tended bar for a living. It is fallacy that simply looking at my mother turned the living into stone. She would warn first, be careful how you look at me. It would always be men who didn't heed her warning. Growing up, I witnessed these stone men who could not believe their fate. Whenever it happened at home, my task was to guide these catatonic zombies out the front door. When she was working the bar, pouring drinks, everyone presumed the paralysis was alcohol related. Often I would be seated at a table, sipping on a soft drink, and she would look my way and give me a sly wink. Her demise was caused by men who spread rumors she was evil and a misanthropist. Not true. She had male friends who were good, who trusted her, and women who were attracted to her strength and ability to ward off the toxic masculinity. Survivors of sexual assaults even wore tattoos resembling my mother with wild snakes for hair. Her beheading escalated her fame, turning her into a legend. The cause of my mother's death I will explain, but first allow me to indulge in the telling of my story. I am a freak of nature. I had no idea what that meant until my mother was beheaded. She had always protected me from the truth. I was, what is the current term? Homeschooled. Mother taught me all I know. She did not prepare me for the cruelty of this world, how people would judge me as being abnormal, born an hermaphrodite. That I was both male and female seemed an important discovery once I understood the difference. As an only child, isolated from kids my age, I never questioned my sexuality, a term that went beyond my years of understanding. Mother dressed me as a boy and had always called me her son. Her murder happened around the time of my puberty. Imagine my shock when told my mother was dead. I was then abducted into social services as an orphan and placed into the foster care system. The monthly bleedings meant I was dying too. The examinations only made my pain worse to realize I was a medical curiosity. I became suicidal when my body rebelled against me and grew breasts. I was mortified by these changes. I was teased and tormented by this uncertainty about whether I was a boy or a girl. I am a mix of several diversities. As one who is both black and white, I have been called many names, but no word or label could define me. Mother told me I was a demigod, God, given my birth from the rape of a powerful man I never knew or cared to know. Powers would come to me, and they have. I can read minds. It is one of my unique gifts, not like Tiresias, the blind prophet, gifted with clairvoyance, who had the ability to see into the future. He too had been turned into a woman after being attacked by mating snakes, transformed from male to female. That is not my fate. I am not blind. I have vision. Also, I inherited my mother's ravishing looks and raven hair cascading from my head like writhing snakes.
One of the things I love about Medusa is the way you take the past and you reform it and reshape it, but in a way it takes us deeper into the myth. It's like the Percy Jackson mythological series on steroids. I mean, I just really, really love it. And it's so intellectual and it's so intelligent and also it's so action-packed. You do a great job of making a a wonderful novel out of this myth and making it current. So I could go on and on about it. I would love to hear more about I would love to hear you read more from the book, and I'm sure everybody else would too. Maybe they can ask about it later. But my question for you is, after hearing that, is you have such a broad range of topics. How do you select them?
They kind of select me. I don't really think of that I want to write a book about the Civil War or something or whatever. It's like, for example, this particular one, Goddess, Son of Medusa, was a strange one. I belong to a few Facebook groups where we post artwork, and my friend said you should post some more of your artwork. So I looked back and I posted the illustration that's on the cover design for Medusa, and someone commented said, "Wow, I really love that illustration. It looks like it should be a on the cover of a book called Goddess." And so I said, "Oh, that's interesting." So I went back and I was looking at it, and it's reminding me of the hair like Medusa. And so I sat down and I started writing the prologue, and it just all of it came to me pretty much as is. And so I was going to write this book that is timeless, and it's you're not really sure where you are in history, if there is such a thing, because it goes into a very modern take on this her Medusa's progeny, who's called Aster, who's intersex, and so I just started writing that, and after a few chapters, I knew how it was going to end, and I won't tell you the ending, but it's so that's kind of that this particular process. Every story has been different, and every novel I've written has a different inspiration that's very key to triggering the whole idea. And then once I get it, I just feel compelled to write it.
Well, taking off from Medusa, this particular book, which is the most current, I'm really interested in the way you will take a topic and modernize it or make it appropriate to our times. In this particular one, it could be part of the Marvel universe of characters, as far as I'm concerned right now. The son of Medusa, goddess, is a fabulous character that has superpowers, I think, and but also very identifiable as part of the question of a gender identity today. And you pull all these topics into the book, which makes it so very, very relevant. I have noticed in terms of your selecting topics that a lot of your books have a psychological sort of context, and I was going to ask you a little bit about that. Where does that come from? You delve deep into the psychology of your characters often, and they come out in the action in the book. So, is that part of the way you select your characters? Is it that they are psychologically interesting, or is that what pulls you into a character?
I would say so. Yeah, my major was psychology, and I just yeah, one of the things I love about the art of novel writing is that you can be any age, any gender, any ethnicity you want. Whereas if you're an actor, you have to work with what you've got pretty much, except with prosthetics or such. But to write it, I delve very deeply into the characters, and to make it believable, I have to get into the zone, and in that moment I am that character, and I can switch back and forth. And um, like the book God, Sex, and Psychosis I wrote was kind of the premise was I think we're all sort of multiple personalities to a degree, and if you're a really good writer or a good actor, whatever, you have to have a repertoire of personalities you can draw from. You know, they're all filtered through yourself, but yeah, and with this one goddess, I just thought, wouldn't it be interesting? This is a speculative thing. Is what would it be like if you were born intersex, and if you had a power that she inherited of a woman in a world that's pretty much dominated by men, and how she deals with it. And it's just an interesting kind of take on it because it does deal with good and evil, and the characters that she confronts, like her father who raped her mother.
So that gives us an insight into how you select. Your ideas are coming from your own mad mind, which is
This is true.
really, really mad. So I think that's interesting, and I think most writers, the topics are coming from their own mad minds. What I'm interested in also, yours is very diverse, obviously. You travel in time and you've been a lot of different people. So after you've come up with this topic and you want to really dig in, is there the inspiration has occurred? What kind of research do you have to do in order to build these worlds?
Yeah, one
They're
of the
very
things.
different worlds.
Well, I did do research for this, but what I love about the internet now is you can find most of the research online. And as compared to when I wrote Exploits of the Satyr back in 2000, no, it was 1995, 7 or something like that. I The internet wasn't that well developed, and I would be checking out multiple books on artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, the Knights Templars, all this research I had to do for this book, and it was just very extensive, and it was labor intensive. It took me years to write it, whereas this one was a lot quicker because the sources that I could find were very easy to find on the internet. But I did do research on Medusa, and a lot of the characters and the names are taken from the actual myth of Medusa.
This one's a little different from your other books in that it's very scene intense, and there's a lot of action, more action, I think, than usual, compiled in a different way. And there's a ton of dialogue, which I think is excellent throughout the book, which means that you have to be all the people talking to one another. Any tips on how to build that kind of scene?
Yeah, well, back to uh, a quote by John Fowles: "To write the text, you have to live in the myth of it." And and I've gotten better and better at it as the novels have come along. But being able to get into that zone, and in the moment when I'm writing, I feel I'm there, and I can switch back and forth to the characters, and it's a very, to me, a very believable uh, uh, place that I'm creating. And I, I guess there's a danger to it where I remember who was some actor, I can't remember what it was saying that, if you're playing Hamlet on stage, you have to believe in that moment that you are Hamlet if you want to make the audience think, believe the character and the performance and stuff. And it's the same as a writer too, is you go deep into these characters, and for the moment you are these characters, and so the dialogue just sort of flows naturally out from the situation. And I think I've gotten better at it as I've gone along.
Well, I think you might have to be a little bit mad to be able
Yeah.
in to be able to inhabit all these characters at the same time. And you do it very, very deftly and very believably. And I'm going to ask you while I'm talking to look for a scene where you have a number of very different characters engaged in a dialogue so that anybody listening can get a feeling for how those characters sound when you're maybe one of the bar scenes, if you could pick one out. And while you're looking, I'll talk a little bit about those bar scenes, unless you already have one selected. I
I-
love the bar scenes because you have a whole crowded room full of characters, some of them from the present and some of them from the past, interacting with one another, and they all seem very real. And I felt while I was reading that I was right there in the book, listening to them all or watching it transpire. So maybe just a little clip of one of the
Okay.
scenes where all the characters are interacting with one another, so people can get a feel for the dexterity with which you are able to execute.
Sure. Well, there's a second. Well, Astor, who's the her descendant, there's a story about her. She, like her mother, she owns and runs a bar with a partner, and she's at the bar, and she notices her father. So, okay. Elder watched Astor with great interest. He held a lager beer, seated in a booth with two of his shipmates. His spies had informed him years ago he had sired a boy. What other lies had he been told? As he drank, he mused. This supposed son he traveled to meet turned out to be a daughter, an intriguing young woman as gorgeous as her mother, who had presumably been transformed into a monster. What do you plan to do with her now, Captain? Shut up, Morris, said Elder. I'm thinking. This son of yours is awfully pretty, joked Aaron. Elder glared at his quartermaster, whose smile froze, deflecting a confrontation by picking up his beer. With his eyes aimed on Aaron, Elder, sa- Elder said, If looks could kill. Have you ever heard that expression? Aaron nodded. Her mother had it, excuse me, her mother had that ability, if you believe in all the stories. Are you saying your daughter might have that power? Don't be an idiot, Morris. It's a fucking myth. Deadly snakes for hair. Get real, said Arian. These fables, they're all bullshit. What was she called again? Medusa. Elder scanned the bar room to survey the strange assortment of people. A man was racking billiards wearing a kilt. A woman beside him wore leather pants. She playfully tapped him on the ass with her cue stick as he leaned over to break the balls. What the fuck is this place? Who are these people? Your daughter does have amazing hair. Oh shit, said Morris. She's looking straight at us. She's coming over here. She's made us. Arian lowered the brim of his cap. We're not invisible, said Elder. She knows nothing. Astor crossed her arms as she looked down at the three men, studying each for a moment. She said to Elder, You're him, my father. Why are you here? Elder gave a puzzled frown. Have we met? You raped my mother. Elder smiled, lifted his beer. Welcome to the world. Moore snorted a laugh and flinched as Astor turned her eyes on him and glared. You are an idiot. I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. And you, Arian, you only wish. Maybe I'll fuck with you again. Elder said, What is she talking about? Nothing. Arian clenched his jaw. Astor, Astor started to leave, then turned back. You disrespected one of my waiters. Manny said you were rude, calling him names. Morris smirked. That's rich. His name is Manny. Emmanuel. Did you call him a queer? But he is, said Aaron, isn't he? We're all queer, said Astor, gender neutral. And of the lot of you here tonight, you three are the queerest of them all. Listen, sister. Elder stopped Aaron from speaking with a raised hand. He was nonchalant. What the hell is this place? Mine. Do you have a name, daughter of mine? Astor. She scoffed at him. You're a captain of what? A ship. She is called the Poseidon. I rule the sea. I knew you'd be arrogant and full of lies. Enjoy your beers, then get the hell out of here, and don't ever come near me again. Or, Elder grinned, you'll regret it.
Oh, I love the topic. I love the delivery. You've always reminded me a little bit of Rod Serling. Only your Twilight Zone, I think, exists in your own mind. So that brings me to my next question, since you have that Twilight Zone in your mind. Um, how do you write? I mean, are you writing at night, only at night for hours and hours and hours, which is what I would imagine. Do you write all day locked up in a room? You produce so many books, and so many of them have a lot of research content. It's constant and it's really well done. What is your method?
I don't write every morning like some people do. Writers, write a little bit every morning. When I'm not working on a novel, I'll read novels and stuff. When I do uh, latch on to a story that I want to write, then I'm very dedicated and I get up very early in the morning. I try to write. That's when it's nice and quiet. I will write a little bit in the evening. I've also found as I've evolved as a writer that the stories come to me at night just before I go to bed, in a kind of a quasi semi-conscious state where the whole story will come, dialogue will come to me, and I'll wake up early in the morning. The same thing when I'm waking up, I'll be thinking of the story and the characters, the dialogue comes to me, and then I want to get down to the my computer and start working on the story every day. So I'm pretty much working every day when I'm working on a novel. Um,
Mhm. Well, there are a lot of questions about, often writers have questions about drafts, first draft, second draft, third draft. And I have a question for you because everybody's a little bit different. I have a way that works for me, and that is to write the whole first draft pretty much as is, as the story evolves. And it usually percolates and evolves pretty quickly, and then go back and work on it, the different parts of it. But I feel this urge to get it all down first. What is your philosophy on drafts? Do you write one draft and that's it? Do you write multiple drafts? Do you write little bits every day and then go back and revise and then go forward? What's your method?
I pretty much write just straight through. Um, and it wasn't that way at the beginning. First novels I wrote, went through a lot of process, but the last few novels I've written, it's pretty much I started and it really right to the end. And then I have currently Leslie White is my copy editor and editorial consultant. I'll show it to her. And so far, the last few novels have been very little changes, but she will point out a couple of things that are really significant that I've missed. Like the last book was, she pointed out here just some anachronistic things and got me thinking that way. Um, and then I'll revise it again, and I will read my novels. Oh God, 50, 100 times, until I get it to where it's smooth and polished to my satisfaction. Um, Early on when I was writing the first exploits of the Satyr, Marion Chris was someone I worked with, and she was really helpful. But it was a struggle. I mean, it was a big epic book, and it took me several years to get the first draft done, and then uh, made many revisions after that. God, Sex, and Psychosis was another one that was just incredible. It was very a deep dive and went through several drafts on that one. Again, Marion was really helpful on that with some suggestions, and heretofore, and also with the first one too. Robin Russell was another person that I worked with, but after I get it to a point and Leslie reads it, I'll have my beta readers, some friends that will read my work before I publish it, and often they'll make a suggestion, catch something that I missed. But The last few novels, last four actually, have been pretty straightforward. I mean, they just go through, and I've been lucky, I guess, that way. Sort of like Portrait of a Rainbow was almost a magical experience. I wrote that in 6 weeks, from starting from Thanksgiving to Christmas. Wanted to write something that was like a Christmas Carol, fable, and it just came to me in a dream almost, the whole thing. So I don't know.
Do you read your work out loud?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it shows in your, you always go through the whole thing and read it out loud. They all read so smoothly.
Thank you.
I think that really works if that's what you're doing. I read my work out loud just so that I have somebody else read it to me because I find it's easier to catch the mistakes when they're coming out of somebody else's mouth.
Actually, I should probably try that trick.
Because you go, oh, did I really write that word that way? Did I really put that in that sentence that way? Are you reading it wrong? And then you find out, no, no, it was my own mistake. I find out.
Actually, I should probably be doing that too. Yeah, it's because when you hear someone else read it, it's all in your head. It sounds perfect, but then, if you have someone else read it, you might catch some things that didn't sound quite right. So,
So are your books also are they can somebody get them and just hear them audiobooks?
I've been encouraged to do that, like heretofore. Elaine, my wife, and Brittany and Lex were trying to encourage me to do that. It seems like an awful long process to record, but maybe I'll do it someday.
So before I turn, I just think that I'm looking forward to your next book, and I want to hear a lot about that one as well. And hopefully, when it comes out, I'm not sure when it's due out, but I'll ask you that question at the end of
Okay.
this uh, this video. I think we will open it up to, we have writers listening in. I'm sure they have questions because you're talking a lot about the craft as well. So why don't we open it up, Elizabeth, for the questions? Are there any questions out there from some of the listeners?
If there are, they have to be in the chat or question and answer. We had it set up, and there are none right now.
Oh, we don't have any questions from anybody. Well, if that's the case, maybe you could read a little. Do you have any selections from your new book that's coming up? Anything that you could share with us?
Yeah, let me grab it here. Let me see.
Meanwhile, folks, if you think of anything you want to ask, um, I think Bernie has a question. Um, Bernie's question is, do you have more than one book on the go at a time? Oh, that's a good question, Bernie.
What was the question? Am I
More
writing
than one
more?
book? Are you writing more than one book at a time?
No, no, it's pretty much I finished. But after I finished Goddess, Son of Medusa, I actually thought that might have been my last book because I didn't know if I had anything else to say. And then surprisingly, like about a few months later, I woke up with this extraordinary dream, and it sparked a memory of a girl I met when I was in college, knew for one day, and it just started this whole idea of the what if, what if this might have happened. So it's a very personal kind of story, and it's kind of like a parallel universe story. Um, but no, to answer your question, yeah, I'm really focused on the one book when I'm working on it until I get it finished.
How do you let them go?
Uh, well,
I
until I
mean, does the concept or the era still, you get so deeply into either outer space or the past, or how do you let those things go after you've finished writing them? Are you still in that space?
yeah, well read it for a while. Like I'll read it over and over again because I'm such a narcissist. I like reading my own stuff, I guess. And but yeah, I just let it go. Like what they say, a poem, it's never finished. It's just you abandon it, but you get it to the point where you think it's as good as it can be. And but I'll read my books over and over until I really feel like they're there and I'm happy with it, the
I
result.
think I think some of the people are thinking that you should consider an audio version, and somebody wants to mention that Ashwood is their favorite Todd Crawshaw book. So I haven't read Ashwood. What is Ashwood?
Oh, it's well, interesting enough that the that was the second book that I tried when I first started writing novels in 1922. Um, the or not 1922, 17, when I graduated from college, for 25 years I wrote three novels that were horrible. Put a lot of work into it. They were all big novels, about 500 pages, typewritten, several drafts, and they're practically, in my opinion, unreadable. But the concepts were good. And so the second book I tried to write was this book, Ashwood. It was a concept I had where that's told from the point of view of the dying patriarch that has been, well, you read, if I read the beginning, is paralyzed, and it's his story through his eyes, and it takes place on one day, on Christmas Day, and it's a family saga, but there's more to it. There's some, but at the time I didn't have the life experience to be able to pull off the concept, and so I came back, and after having this dream, it just sparked the idea again, and so I completely rewrote it. It's hardly anything from the original, but I can read something if you want,
Sure.
or more questions. I don't care.
Well, I do have one other question.
Yeah,
And it sort of mystifies me. You are a father, a husband, a business owner with Crawshaw Design, and very busy on a. How do you find the time or carve out the time? And I'm sure a lot of writers would want to know this. You've you've written so many books. How do you carve out the time to be able to do this? And is there a way that you're able to bring your focus to just concentrate on that book? What are your methods? Do you have any secrets that you wouldn't mind sharing? Or maybe they're just things that are singularly yours and yours alone that nobody
it's
else
just,
can do.
it's just an obsessive passion I have that when I latch onto something, I just find the time. Probably shouldn't spend as much time on it, but I do. Um, I talked about this in the talk on when I spoke on God, Sex, and Psychosis, but I equate that I became a better writer after I was married and we started having kids. I took a hiatus for about 5 years after writing these three failed novels, and but it was being in a marriage relationship with kids and everything that actually gave me the anchor to be able to go off on these speculative fiction journeys where was kind of the ballast or the anchor that kept me so I could go off and in my mind and on these weird worlds, and had a safe home to come back to, and it actually uh I don't know, it was, I think that actually made me a better writer, having that stability. But finding the time is just it's just I find it.
Gosh, that's amazing. There's another question from Bernie Clark, who's also is he writes historical fiction, and Bernie's question is, oh, this is a good one for all writers. How do you market your books?
Horribly. That is the one missing link in my I put the passion in, I write the stories, I feel great about them, and then it's not my forte. So I would love to have more people read my books, but I'm just happy that I've actually blessed that I'm able to create these stories. So I'm hoping that more people will read them, but uh at this point, I really don't care about the making lots of money off it. I don't care about fame or that's crap. I just like to have people explore these worlds that I've created because they're really quite extraordinary, in my opinion.
Well, in a perfect world, knowing that you write speculative fiction, how would you like your books to be marketed and who would you like to have reading them?
Uh, uh, it's they're kind of like it's bad analogy, kind of like the Baskin Robbins of flavors. I'm not interested in writing a series of murder mysteries or a series of certain genre. They all have a psychological bent to them, and I try to find novels that are each one is different. They're all, from when I was at the beginning, there's fantasy ones and there's all sorts of So it really it depends on someone's taste, but I think it's good fiction, so I don't know. But I've written a couple that well, like God, Sex, and Psychosis, a good close friend of mine, she's read all my other books and she started to read it and she said, I can't read this. It's just too intense for me. And then another one with God, Sex, and Psychosis, for example, I was at the Left Coast Writers. I was there one time and I was talking with some people there, talking about this book I was working on, and someone was there. I didn't know him, and she's an attorney, and she'd worked with the criminal system, and she heard that I was writing about this book about multiple personality disorder, serial killer, and she said, "Oh, that really sounds interesting." I said, "Well, would you like to read a book before it's published, the demo?" And she said, "Sure." So when I got to it, I she was there, and I gave it to her, and she uh, she got back to me with an email saying some comment about it, and I was thinking, well, I thought it was kind of a negative one. And I said, well, do you think there's anything salvageable? And she said, oh my God, are you kidding? It's a freaking amazing book. But she said, but we sat down, we've become friends since then. And she said she didn't know anything about me, and this character is so it's a thriller. And so she said, oh my God, I don't know who this person is, this writer, and maybe this person's got some horrible mental problems as well. So I was writing some believable characters, but it's I don't know where I was going with that, but it was an interesting experience.
Well, I think that what you need is somebody to market them for you because they're really amazing books. So you should find a great publisher or a great agent who will be interested in all of your books. And I do think Goddess, Son of Medusa, is the one to send out to people so that they know about you. And I also think that your talent in audio, the way your books come across when you read them is really important, and that should be some component of your marketing, in my opinion. I
Thank you.
don't know that we have any more questions at this time, so maybe you could treat us to another reading from the newer book, if that's the newest book, if that's okay with you.
Sure. Uh, so this is the epigraph. It says, "In memory of a girl who was and could have been," and then there's a quote, "And I find it kind of funny. I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you. I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world." It's from Tears for Fears, the song, if you might recognize it. So then it goes on to the obituary. Cassandra Cassie Crowe was laid to rest yesterday at Fernwood Cemetery, Mill Valley, California, after her skeletal remains were discovered at South Jetty Beach in Oregon, following her 7-year disappearance. She is believed to be the final victim in a series of murders that shocked the art world. Cassandra was born in Eugene, Oregon. A self-proclaimed teenage runaway, she hitchhiked to San Francisco during the summer of love, where she remained, eventually marrying and raised a family in Marin County. Art World magazine named Cassandra Crowe Queen of the Canvas. She was also featured on the cover of Time magazine for her unique oil paintings, ranging in style from surreal portraits to her art in humanistic expressionism. She described her meteoric rise to fame as accidental and not of her making, nor her desire. "My wish is for solitude and anonymity," she told a reporter days before her disappearance. This statement, desiring seclusion, belied a deeper truth. "Cassie was a wild child," said a friend who knew her during the 60s and 70s. "She was a dichotomy, an enigma, a free spirit." Cassandra is survived by her husband, Aaron Ashwood, son Blaze, twin daughters Sky and Iris, grandsons Logan and Flynn, and granddaughters Cora and Birdie. A celebration of life will be held in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park Polo Fields on Saturday, May 9th. Anyone who wishes to attend is welcome. Chapter 1. Euphoria. That was a sensation of pleasure he was feeling. The warmth of her sparkling face, a smile full of love, her appearance hovering before him dreamlike, pressing her lips into his, lingering there as their bodies became one. He felt her magic again. How could she be dead? Grandpa, are you in there? Knock, knock. Ashwood opened his eyes. He saw the girl he loved and had lost. He blinked, confused by her playful giggle, before recognizing her to be his granddaughter Bertie. For a moment he forgot he was paralyzed, locked in the prison of his body, the result of a stroke. In his mind he smiled, wanting to tell her what a joy she was to behold, how much she reminded him of Cassie, but he couldn't move his muscles. He vaguely recalled the onslaught of the headache, followed by a strange warmth turning his head into melting wax, numbing his face, his arms, his legs, until the collapse into darkness. Upon awakening, he was slow to grasp the reality of his situation. Lying upright in a hospital bed, unable to move, he found himself being spoken to by doctors and nurses as though he had regressed to an infant, a newborn, establishing facial recognition and trying to comprehend this new dimension of life. Are you okay? Can you hear me? Blink if you can. Aaron blinked at Bertie. Everyone is starting to arrive. I can wheel you into the living room if you'd like. Mom says it's okay. Would you like me to? Aaron blinked again. Awesome. Give me just a sec. Bertie looked at her 12-year-old self in the mirror, bunching her blonde hair, pulling it to the side, and tying it into a ponytail with a sparkly green scrunchie. She petted the excuse me, she petted the fuzzy white reindeer on the front of her red sweater as if it was a real animal, then turned back to face her grandfather. I feel kind of stupid wearing this. Dad bought it for me, thinking I'd like it. He still sees me as a little girl who plays with little ponies and dolls. That's not me anymore. But it's Christmas, so I have to wear it, right? Do you think I look stupid? Aaron blinked and Bertie burst into giggles. I love you, Grandpa. As she checked to make sure his body harness was secure before moving him, she recalled how he used to toss her into the air when she was young. She would shriek with laughter, knowing she'd be caught, then tossed again. She tightened the support vest straps. Is that too tight? I'm not hurting you, am I? Aaron shut his eyes to indicate no. Her grandfather's regular live-in caregiver had 3 days off to be with their family, given that it was Christmas. Bertie volunteered to look after him until the temporary nurse her parents had arranged to come help later in the day arrived. She stepped on the brake release, unlocking the wheels, and took hold of the handles in the back that had emergency handbrakes. Bertie began to push him forward. Okay, off we go. I could read on, but
That was great, though, and a great preview.
it switches off. Takes place in 2020, and then the next chapter switches over to 1967, where Cassie and Aaron Ashwood meet for the first time, and that's the story. And it follows through 1967 all the way to the present time, what happens to her and all this, and it keeps flashing back to 2020, and her whole Cassie's life is and their life is pieced together through the recollections of Ashwood and his children and his grandchildren. So it's the mystery of so
I just want to mention that sounds wonderful. I can't wait to read it. In answer to the question about ways to market books, though, I do want to mention something to the writers that are listening, and also to you. I'm not sure if you all have heard of CLMP, the Consortium of Literary Magazines and Publishers. Because sometimes just being aware of the literary landscape in who's publishing, and sometimes smaller publishers, art publishers, and that's a category I think that your books might fall into, Todd, is a good thing to do because you don't have to approach them through agents. And just making them familiar with your work, I would suggest that people look up CLMP online and check out the Consortium of Literary Publishers, what they're looking for, who they are. You'll get an idea of the landscape and maybe be able to find your place in that landscape. I think it's really important for writers to understand what they're writing into, the world that they're writing into as well. So I just wanted to leave that as a final note for people to look into groups, places where they can get the skinny on how to market their books or where to take their books or who can market their books for them. Todd, any upcoming events? Any events coming up? besides this video, which will be posted, folks, on online on YouTube. So we'll send a link out to you so that you can also share it with other people. Anything else, Todd, that you're going to be appearing
No,
or
still
share?
working on seeing what I'm going to do with the Ashwood. If you want to go to my website, toddcrawshaw.com, all the different books are there, and there's a lot of uh, sample chapters to read and information if anyone's interested.
And they can find your books in bookstores everywhere, especially Book Passage.
Oh yeah, everywhere.
Okay. Okay. I just want to thank you so much for participating in this and sharing your information about your book and also your process, because I think it's important to all of us to know what other people are doing, and this helps us understand more and then give us more to read always, because we can read the works of some of our compatriots and people who are writing the same kinds of things as us and people who are writing different things. But some of the lessons are the same for all of us. I want to thank everybody who joined us. Uh, this video will be posted online, so you can come back to it. You can share it with others. We'll be doing more of these. And do check out Todd's work at bookstores everywhere.
Anyway, thanks, Linda, for the invite. I appreciate it.
Sure. I just love talking to you. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being the behind the scenes person hosting all of this. I hope we'll hear more from all of you who are listening in about your books and your projects. And again, thanks for everyone for joining us this evening. So good night, everyone.
Bye.